Good evening and welcome to What's Your Story? You know, in the city of Hartford, we are blessed to have the Yard Goats. That's right, the Hartford Yard Goats. We are equally as lucky tonight to have with us an individual who is Director of Events Services for the Yard Goats, who will give us a little bit of the background history of the Goats, talk a little bit about his history, and we'll throw in a surprise as well to let you know about his days as a mascot. So my viewing audience tonight, please sit back and relax and enjoy this show. I am pleased to have on set tonight Mr. Conor Geary. Welcome to the show, Conor.
Great to be here, Jim. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, why don't we start by telling our viewing audience a little bit about you? Like, where were you born, Conor?
Sure. So I was born in right in Hartford, Connecticut, Mount Sinai Hospital in 1987. And I lived in Hartford when I was very young, and then my family moved to Manchester. And I spent most of my youth and into my adolescence through middle school in Manchester. We then moved to East Hartford, Connecticut. And then my parents still live in East Hartford to this day, and I attended East Catholic High School. I graduated from East Catholic.
What was the mascot of the school?
Oh, we're the Eagles of East Catholic High.
I ask everybody that.
That's right.
The Eagles, okay.
Yep, we're the Eagles.
Yeah.
And so after graduation, I decided that I wanted to go to college outside the state of Connecticut, and I ended up at a small liberal arts institution called Siena College, just outside of Albany, New York, and obtained my degree from there, studied marketing, management, sort of a business degree, and then did a fair amount of philosophy as well, too. That was kind of a humanities interest that I had personally. And then very consciously returned to come back to Connecticut after I graduated from college, in no small part due to the fact that I really felt that the city was on the cusp of sort of this revitalization. And I had opportunities to go to a lot of the larger major metro areas and decided to come back home and be part as much as I could at the time of sort of Hartford's reemergence as the capital city in Connecticut.
What are some of your fond memories of growing up?
So, I mean, I can tell you very vivid memories I have of going to Whalers games at the Civic Center and eating in the Wendy's, with my dad before the game, or going to BT's, which was later City Steam in downtown Hartford, going to BT's and having a bite to eat in between a Whalers game, and sometimes they'd even do 2 games in a day. So a Huskies game or something like that would be played as well. And so I really enjoyed going downtown. There was a magic to it. I remember Constitution Plaza being lit up. I remember the wreaths on top of the buildings as you drove down 84 during Christmas time. I mean, that's all part of the story of Hartford.
The G-Fox.
Oh yeah, the Winter Wonderland.
Yeah,
I remember that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got siblings?
I do. I have a younger sister, my sister Nora.
And what is Nora doing these days?
Sure. So she lives in Manchester. So home is home for us.
Okay.
And she works more than I do, believe it or not. She does 3 jobs, and I don't know how she juggles her world. But
well, let's give Nora a shout out.
Shout out to my beautiful sister Nora.
All right. Now, you say your parents are still living in Manchester?
They're in East Hartford.
East Hartford.
Yep, they're in East Hartford.
What about your mom and your dad? What did they do professionally?
Yeah, my mother works for the state of Connecticut. She's been in the world of advocacy pretty much her whole life. So a lot of advocacy for youth and children, a lot of advocacy for persons with disabilities. And my father, much to a large extent similarly, he runs a nonprofit agency that run group homes for folks in Hartford, West Hartford, with developmental disabilities.
Really?
In the IDD community. And his agency tailors to folks who are in the Jewish community. Not exclusively, but certainly tailors the lifestyle of folks who are in the Jewish community.
Now, how did your background affect you? I mean, most of us, when we get college age, we want to get out from under the parents. We want to fly the coop, so to speak. Was that your motivation, just to get out, or did you have a plan, or did your mother and father's background affect you and put your feet on a certain path? How did that happen for you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So personally, I maintain a relationship that I think would be enviable for a lot of people with my parents. I love my parents. They're my best friends, and that's been that way for a long time, and I'm lucky to have them, and they know that. They know I feel that I'm lucky. they were supportive in any decision I wanted to make. When it came to college, I, again, sort of very consciously wanted to get outside the state of Connecticut that had been home for a long time. I wanted to see a different area, a different city. Admittedly, I didn't go too far. 2 hours away to Albany, New York is not that distant. I really thought I was going to go to school in Washington, D.C. That was my kind of primary driver when I was in high school. I loved the city when I was there. I had done some events there and forums and things like that. And I really thought I was going to go to school in Washington. But ultimately decided that the vibe, the feeling I got from Siena College fit me as a person. And I think that speaks to the question you're kind of asking, which is kind of the integrity, the values that they had. I really felt like that they had instilled within me. I was going to be able to, really reap that when I went to Siena, and I did. I really enjoyed my time in college.
Now, when I met you earlier, we talked a lot about your Irish heritage. We talked about the fact that you've been to Ireland several times.
I have indeed.
How's that impacted you?
In a few ways. So when I was in college, I studied abroad in Dublin. I went to Dublin City University for a semester. And while I had traveled outside the United States before, the experiences I had in just the short 3 months that I was away were truly life-changing in terms of perspective and worldview. And I gained a fondness for travel and sort of cultural experiences. Yes, Dublin is a sort of a Western civilization, and I had a personal connection in that regard. But at the same time, I learned a lot about sort of where my ancestors came from and the history that they went through. And Ireland has a very long, rich, and at times quite troubled history that I was able to learn about, study while I was in the same environment, and really gain an appreciation for. Since I studied abroad, my family, I think 15 or 16 of us actually all were fortunate enough to take a trip over to the West Coast, which I did not get to visit while I was studying abroad. And so it was a part of Ireland I had never seen before, and we experienced it in a way that was very impactful and emotional for our family, to the point where we ended up in the physical building, the structure that my great-grandmother was born in her small, tiny little hometown village in County Kerry, Ireland.
Wow.
House is not the term I would use. It's no longer a house, and there was, I'll take that with me for as long as I live, and I know my parents and my sister would do the same. So. Now,
you're the Director of Event Services for the Hartford Yard Goats.
That's correct.
How did you get that position, and what do you do?
Yeah, so I guess I'll take the first one, how I got that position. I worked for about 9 years in hospitality management in Hartford. So I was a manager for a couple of restaurants in downtown Hartford. So my background was largely in food, beverage, dining, and hospitality. I also have sort of this background in performance. I did a lot of community theater, musical theater, stage, improv coursework, things like that. So when I was in college, I was the student government president at Siena, and we, at the time, had a very successful basketball team. And my senior year, we had a game that was being televised nationally on ESPN. And the gentleman who was the Bernie, the St. Bernard mascot, was sick. And so I got a call and basically was told, hey, listen, we don't know who we really trust to kind of go in the suit for this big game. Would you be willing to do it? And I felt that there was a little bit of a sense of duty to fill those shoes, fill those paws, as it were, and so I mascotted for the school.
Yeah.
Now that, years later, when Hartford announced that there was going to be a baseball team in Hartford, I had a full-time job. I was managing restaurants, but my schedule was highly volatile. So I would have these weekdays off, or I'd work nights and have days all to myself. And when I found out that the team was looking for a mascot, I thought it'd be a great way to maybe, get a few free tickets or a little extra beverage money or something. And so I decided I was going to audition to be a mascot. I thought that would be a cool thing. And when the day came, some weeks later on, when the day came and it popped up on my calendar, I happened to be off. And so I said, I'll go audition. And I couldn't find out where the auditions were going to be. And lo and behold, the auditions had been postponed. So I sent them, the Yard Goats, a message on social media, and they told me that they were in need of someone to do an event that particular night. And I said, well, I can do that. So I showed up at the office, did my thing and became the first professional mascot for the Hartford Yard Goats
All right.
during the season where the team was on the road the whole time. So that was how I got my hoof in the door. And and after doing that for a bit, it was after the first season actually that I had gone to a number of games as a fan. Really wasn't mascotting anymore. I mean, at the time that the stadium opened to play games in Hartford, they had a whole nother team that was ready to kind of do that. And I attended a game for my father's surprise 60th birthday in June. And on that day, I decided if I ever got a chance to work for the team, I would. And so at the conclusion of the first season at Dunkin' Donuts Park, I contacted the senior leadership and said, if you ever have a job that fits kind of what I do for a living, I'm more than happy to come do that. And in the off season, we sat down and we chatted, and they said that they wanted to kind of give a fresh look at how they were handling hospitality and events in the off season. And this role was created, and that's how I got the job.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Let's start with the name.
Sure.
Yard Goats.
Yeah.
Now, what do those initials stand for? You told me.
So yard goat is an actual term. It's a term that exists in the rail industry. So it's the piece of equipment that's responsible for getting train cars lined up in a rail yard. That term is a yard goat. That's what refers to that piece of equipment. In the shipping industry, it would be similar to like a tugboat. It has this sort of laborious role to it. So the words existed, the term existed, but it's not a very well-known phrase. And then again, when it was first announced what the possibilities were, I had submitted some names I thought were quite fantastic. And none of them made the final cut. And then I saw the list of the top 10, and I was sort of astonished. And then you sort of get stuck in this rut of you can't imagine it, and so you don't love it. But here we are some years later, and the proof has been in the pudding. So when you start to look at it from a marketing standpoint, a baseball field can also be referred to as a yard. Or when a batter hits a home run, they can be said to have gone yard. And in sports, the acronym GOAT stands for greatest of all time. And if I ask any of the viewers to think about a sports team that has the GOAT as their mascot or their image, there's really no other team. So we've cornered the GOAT market, and there's all these layers of sports marketing.
So that's how it came about.
And so it was decided that was going to be the name. And there was a big ceremony and celebration. It was it was a fan submitted name. I met that fan this past season actually, and he still goes to the games and has his tickets for winning the contest.
Terrific. Explain what a AA team is.
Sure. So in baseball, there is a structure to the organization or the industry of baseball as a whole. At the top of that, we all know, is Major League Baseball. That's your Colorado Rockies, your New York Yankees, your Boston Red Sox. Beneath that, you have the minor leagues, Minor League Baseball, which is an organization independent unto itself. But those two organizations, Major League Baseball and Minor League Baseball, maintain an affiliation relationship where minor league teams are affiliated in many, if not most instances, with a major league franchise. And so AAA baseball is sort of the top echelon of minor leagues. AA baseball is immediately below that, single A baseball below that, low A unaffiliated baseball. There are some other kind of leagues within the minor league structure. What's been interesting and worth noting is that while AAA tends to be again, sort of a higher tier of baseball in terms of talent and the proximity to getting called up to the majors, the overall talent level in baseball is just tremendous. I mean, so you have players who are in their late teens, early 20s who are vying for major league positions and have the talent that's world class. And so it's very much the case that the players, even at the AA level, are the major league talent of tomorrow and are working very hard on a day in, day out and off-season basis to try to gain position and work their way up into the major leagues, which is, of course, where the dollars are.
So now the Yard Goats are a AA team.
We are a AA team.
And the audience might wonder, why are we affiliated with Colorado? That's way out there.
Yeah, well, it's because we're awesome and Hartford's awesome. So who doesn't want to be affiliated with us?
That's right, okay.
So the affiliations between a minor league team and the major league sort of franchise are a formal relationship established through what's called a player development contract, or a PDC. That's correct.
Yes.
So a PDC is the established relationship between the two teams. And those PDCs have a set term to them. They are generally either 2 years or 4 years, is kind of the most common arrangement. And so you have this supply and demand ebb and flow where between a 2 and a 4 year term, a major league team may be seeking a different minor league franchise. Sometimes that's for geographical reasons. Sometimes that's for talent pipelines. Sometimes that's for organizational purposes. We happen to be the affiliate of the Colorado Rockies because they signed on board with our ownership group when the team was originally New Britain. And that carried over to Hartford, and then they re-signed another PDC for 2 years at the end of the 2018 season, I believe, so that for 2019 and through this next season, we still maintain our affiliate relationship with the Colorado Rockies.
Terrific.
I think I got all that right.
Okay.
I'm the events guy, but I think I have.
Well, that's okay. We'll edit the tape.
Sure. There you go.
Now, how many guys are traditionally on the team? How many men?
So for years, it was a 24-man roster. Major League Baseball had a 20.
Why no women?
Well, they have a league of their own. No, I'm just kidding.
There's no crying there, is there?
Yeah, no, I couldn't speculate as to, I mean, part of it is pipeline, the collegiate athletics.
Yeah.
And I mean, softball as its own sport is different than baseball, and it is a different sport altogether. But, you know, I would tell you, so it was a 24-man roster.
Yep.
And Major League Baseball employed a 25-man roster. So some years ago, minor league baseball upped the number of players to a 25-man roster in line with the major league roster size as well, too.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, how many games do they play, and how are the games divided up at home games and away games? How do they do that?
So there's 140 games in the minor league baseball season in our league, which is the Eastern League. And it's split 50-50. There's 70 games at home, 70 games away. All travel is via bus. We go as far north as Portland, Maine to play the Sea Dogs. We go as far west as Akron, Ohio. And we go as far south as Richmond, Virginia to play the Flying Squirrels. So there are 12 teams in the Eastern League.
Did you say Flying Squirrels?
Flying Squirrels. Yeah. Hey, we're lucky we got yard goats.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, absolutely. So it seems that those teams really want outrageous names to spicing things up and make things fun.
Yeah, I mean, so there's an identity that comes with a smaller market in general, right? So there's an identity that comes with that. And also, I think it's part of the nature of what the minor leagues are. I mean, we are an entertainment venue, you know? I mean, you'll hear even the president of our organization say that we throw a party and a baseball game breaks out. You know, so unlike the majors, where the front office is looking at, you know, stats and batting average and, you know, OPS and ERA and all these things. In the minor league level, almost none of that is considered by our front office. That's all stuff that is being looked at by, in our case, Colorado and their player development. But from a front office standpoint, we sell smiles and, you know, sodas and hot dogs and caps and, you know, that is what and I say that is what the business of the minor leagues is and really has been for quite some time, that sort of sense of Americana, bringing the family out, going to the game after work or bringing a group, especially in smaller markets. It's the entertainment value that we're providing. And, you know, that's something that we take a lot of pride in. That's something that we work year-round, tirelessly, to try to improve year over year. We've been fortunate in Hartford to have really a world-class facility, second to none.
It's really a beautiful.
And if you haven't been, you're missing out. Again, personally, part of why I worked there was how amazing a time I had as a patron. So, you know, we're fortunate to have that, and but that is what these teams do. They have these zany identities. They want to sell caps and T-shirts and crazy fun and do kooky things that you can't necessarily get away with at the major league level.
Now, tell me something about the life of a AA player. You just said they travel by bus exclusively. There's no air travel. They're paid by the major league franchise, or how are they how are they, the contracts set, or what do they do?
Yeah, and it's interesting right now because as we sit here and talk this week, there are conversations between Major League Baseball and minor league baseball, again, far over my head or anything like that. But for their time in a season, they earn pay on sort of a weekly, monthly basis. You know, it's not uncommon even in maybe some more rural communities to have players who still live with families, you know, just like you would if you were studying abroad sometimes. So what they're vying for is the opportunity to get signed to a higher level of baseball. I mean, that's really where the dollars are when you're performing at that level. Some players are drafted. If they're drafted, they may have, you know, signing options and bonuses for them. But their life is one where it is not particularly glamorous behind the scenes. They work out a ton. They're constantly trying to perfect their craft. And again, to the extent that they are working to better themselves and put themselves in the best position to advance in the world of baseball, because that is their chosen profession.
Sure, yeah.
You know, there's a lot of hard work that comes with that. I mean, as big a stage as we like to provide and as amazing a facility as we like to provide and the amenities that we try to provide our players and how great it is to play in front of an electric fan base at Dunkin' Donuts Park all season long, not a player in that dugout doesn't hope to go somewhere else and earn a larger paycheck. And that's what they're playing for.
How much are tickets?
Well, tickets start anywhere as low as $6. $13 is kind of your average field box ticket. I believe I read somewhere that bringing a family of 4 to a minor league baseball game on average is now more cost effective than going to the movies, believe it or not.
Really?
Yeah. So we try to encourage the idea, especially at our field, at our ballpark, that it's everyone's ballpark. We have areas of seating that are reserved as our Dunkin' dugout, for example. We actually donate an entire section of seating to groups who are focused on bringing youth to the ballpark who maybe don't have the budget for it.
Oh.
So tickets are, I mean, you know, in that regard, we started complimentary.
Yes.
But at the same time, we're bringing a lot of people into downtown Hartford. We saw over 400,000 tickets sold last year for the season in a stadium that seats just shy of 7,000 people.
Wow,
that's a tremendous number.
What about parking? People are always concerned about that.
So again, I'm going to put my personal hat on for a second. I've lived in downtown Hartford. I've worked in downtown Hartford for over 10 years. There is ample parking, and the city has made strident efforts to ensure that for games like ours, that parking is as low a burden as possible.
Okay.
And I've gone to a lot of the I've parked blocks away for $80, you know, sometimes, and you got to trek all the way up.
Yeah.
Parking's affordable. It'll be $7, I believe, this season. And there's ample spaces within a 2-block radius of our ballpark for just about every car that needs to be housed for an evening game.
Oh, terrific, Conor. Thank you for coming tonight.
Thank you for having me. This was a great opportunity, and I hope we see you this season.
That's all the time we have for tonight's show. We hope you've enjoyed it. And get to Dunkin' Donuts Park and see the Yard Goats if you haven't done that this year. My name is James Ransom Reed Jr., and this is What's Your Story? Everybody has a story, and if you have one, please send it to me at jockojim@gmail.com. Thank you, and good night.